Okay, just a heads up. With this one, it's a bit spontaneous. I like my videos that way actually because I feel that if I'm not reading from prepared notes, I can be a bit more. I mean, I'm always candid, I'm always honest, but I can be a bit more spontaneous, and that's a good thing because sometimes I interject thoughts that I might not otherwise do if I was being a bit more meticulous and prepared, so to speak. Um, Also, I want to say from the outset, just so that people don't miss this, this is a video where I actually would like to see particular responses. Now, I know I've been sloppy at replying to comments of late, and I do apologize for that. I really will try and get around to getting back to some comments. I can't promise getting back to all of them, but I will try to get back to some comments. I know I've been sloppy of late, so apologies for that. I've just been very busy with a lot of different things. Um, and it's a lot quicker to upload a video than it is to go through comments and reply to them. But I will try. With this one though, I am genuinely interested, and I'm particularly interested. I've never looked at what the demographics of my subscribers are. I'm not even sure if YouTube provides demographics at the moment because a lot of things are changing. But I've never looked at. I know that I've got more men than women subscribing. Don't know particularly why. Maybe of a particular age group, I don't know. But this video I want to particularly ask people of my generation and people who are a bit younger as well, basically millennials. So I'm addressing here people aged between roughly early 20s to mid 30s, roughly speaking. I'm not saying like you can't comment if you're not of that age group, but I am particularly interested in fellow millennials and your take on this. And what I'm thinking of is how it seems to be that so many millennials um, align to the political left, particularly to, for want of a better term, woke politics. Now, when I say woke, I'm not using it as a pejorative. It's something that activists themselves have used, as in being woke, being woken up to social justice. It's not a position I entirely agree with, but that's a self-description. So when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying it as a pejorative, although I certainly am critical of some of the intolerance that comes out of it. But it does seem that a lot of people my age and younger are very well to the left. And I know that isn't the whole picture. I'm well aware, for example, that there are young conservatives, young Trump supporters. I'm not, by the way, but I know it's not the whole picture, but sometimes it just seems to be the perception. As an example of this, I volunteered in Oxfam 2 years ago, the British charity that focuses on poverty, both in the UK and around the world. It's a well-established charity. Anyway, I volunteered in shop which closed for a range of reasons. But anyway, pretty much everyone in there, their politics were pretty well to the left. Now you might think this follows because it's a charity that focuses on particularly overseas aid, which tends to be associated as a left-wing position. I'm not sure that it entirely is, but there may be something in that. But I kind of resent that conclusion because I think I've come across conservatives and people who are more to the right than myself who do care about human rights and do also care about social justice, albeit in different ways. Um, Personally, I've always seen myself as a centrist, so it isn't my username, but I don't, that's something I do take quite seriously because I honestly think that it's not sitting on the fence. I honestly think it's the most honest way I can describe myself because some of my positions are fairly conservative. My views on crime, for example, at least in the British context, would be pretty conservative. In the social sense, I'm not talking the party sense. But then I've got fairly left-wing views as well, with a range of things. It's a bit harder to come up with an example, but certainly I've been called a lefty by conservatives, and left-wing people have called me a conservative, so I've had both thrown at me. So I must be doing something right. I guess, for example, my views on immigration would be centre ground. I mean, I believe in strict vetting. I do believe in very strict vetting. I also believe in the merits of integration. But where I differ from conservatives is I don't believe in just pulling up the drawbridge completely, or um, I don't believe, for example, in the Conservative Party's position of focusing on financial revenue as a way of coming into the UK. I think that's wrong. I think the focus should be on what people are contributing as individuals and their background. That to me seems to be a practical thing. I mean, you could have someone who is on a very high salary, but they may not share Western values. So I think the Tories are wrong to focus on that as they have been doing. Um, but I've also been quite outspoken about my thoughts on, like I say, the intolerance as I see it from certain progressive wings or certain woke wings. That is to say, if you disagree that someone born with a penis can be called a woman in the traditional sense, um, then you're portrayed to be a transphobic bigot. If you are critical of Black Lives Matter, then you must be a white supremacist. Um, I could go on. You know, there's a lot of kind of positions that people are expected to take, otherwise they are deemed to be the enemy. And I really have a problem with that. I had a lengthy debate actually with someone I've been connected with for a long time. I wouldn't say he was a great friend. He was like a Facebook acquaintance. We got on relatively okay. We discussed films. We discussed Hitchcock films, things like that. And he seemed like a decent enough guy. Um, but he took a post I made about Black Lives Matter and really just parroted a lot of nonsense about my positions. Um, I haven't disconnected from him just yet, but um, it's an example of the sort of groupthink that's going on here. So anyway, to get to the point, kind of an open question. If you are a millennial, would you consider yourself to be centre ground or even more conservative? I'm not conservative, but it does seem that the balance is definitely tipped towards the left. I mean, if we look at university campuses, I'm so glad that I am no longer in university because there's sort of nonsense that is coming out, for example, about monitoring microaggressions and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. But when I look around, I mean, I mentioned Oxfam. It's not that all the people volunteering there were young; there were older people as well. But pretty much universally, it was, and I say that because, when it was quiet, we'd have conversations. People would discuss current affairs, and sometimes I would just busy myself doing something else because I didn't really want to get into some of the things that were being brought up. Um, and I feel that millennials as a generation are often dismissed as the snowflake generation, the overly sensitive generation by older generations. There was that whole thing in the 2010s, okay, boomer. That was more of an American thing. It wasn't really a thing here, but um, I think that is the perception of millennials that we're all a bunch of politically correct snowflakes. And I want to say that is not the case. That mentality doesn't represent all of us. Um, and I also think it's unfair to say all millennials are, you know, weak or overly sensitive. I mean, young soldiers who've done tours of duty in the Middle East are among millennials. You can't generalize any generation. You can't say, all millennials are a bunch of whiny snowflakes. It's really not the case. And by the way, that's not a term I use. I'm just using it as an example of what of what the stereotype is. I try to avoid name calling. I won't say I'm totally above it. You know, if someone's throwing fire at me, I will fight fire with fire. But yeah, I think it is a perception of the millennial generation. Now, I'm 34. I would actually be considered an older millennial in the sense that the millennial generation is roughly people born between 1983 and 1999, roughly speaking. I was born in 1985, so that places me in the older side of the millennial generation. This is a big generation, you know, in terms of numbers. I think we now outnumber the number of baby boomers. So we're actually the biggest generation right now. Um, but, you know, I just want to know if you're 35 and under. You know, you've subscribed to my channel, so I assume some of the things I have to say you either agree with or at least you're interested in, even if you disagree with me. Um, but I'm just curious. You know, I cannot be the only one that feels this way. And I have to admit, sometimes, particularly where I live, I mean, Sunderland is a pretty left-wing city. This is notwithstanding the last election where the Tories done pretty well. Sunderland is a pretty left-wing city. So the chances are, if you talk to a young person in Sunderland, there's a very strong chance they will be politically well to the left. And that's fine, it's all right. But just occasionally, it is a little bit, I do feel a little bit like I'm in a political wilderness because, you know, being a centrist these days is a little bit lonely because you have, on one hand, the really hard rights aspect of Trump supporters and really hardline Brexiteers. And then you have the really, you know, woke left side of things. You know, where you have to have your little Black Lives Matter banner and you have to hound J.K. Rowling online because she's a transphobic bigot and all that sort of stuff. So for people like me, I know I'm not the only one, but sometimes it can feel like, well, where are the other centrists out there? Um, I've spoken to people who are older than me in their 50s, 60s, who have similar ideology and I get on well with them, but I'm thinking of people my age. I mean, as an example, if I was to date a lady, I wouldn't expect her to be an ideological twin. You know, it's good to have some disagreements, but there are certain things we draw a line with. I mean, I'm thinking of what Lawrence Fox said, he wouldn't have a woke girlfriend. Would I go that far? Maybe not, but I think I would probably find it difficult if I had a girlfriend who was always really, for example, militantly feminist or really showing her woke credentials all the time and being overly sensitive about, you name it, microaggressions or whatever. So yeah, let me know. Do you consider yourself centrist, moderate, middle ground, or even centre right, centre left? Because I know people on the left are very reasonable people. They're not loony left. They're not unreasonable people, and probably I wouldn't agree with them on everything. But I can see that they're reasonable people, and they're not rushing to censor those they disagree with. Um, and likewise, there's people on the right. You know, I've got Brexiteer friends. Um, wouldn't necessarily agree with all their positions, but that's that. So let me know your thoughts. And this one I definitely will look out for the comments. By the way, this isn't a video to sort of get into political debates about, you know, so please, I don't want anyone saying, oh, Nathan, how do you justify this or how do you justify that? That's fine. There's a place for that. But this video, I'm just interested in seeing if anyone out there feels the same way as I do. That is to say, other millennials who maybe feel, what is it with our generation? Why is there so many people who seem to be so aligned to the woke narrative of things? I mean, if there is this pejorative of middle-aged, and this is not a term I would use, but middle-aged Brahmins, i.e., middle-aged white guys who tend to read the Daily Mail and be very angry about a lot of things. If that's one stereotype, then the other stereotype is a lot of young university students are very woke. And I don't think it represents a whole picture, but sometimes that can be the perception. So, let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.